Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So, we were talking about the architecture of the Sirat, and we ended at the point where we said that Sirat is actually the manifestation of how a person walks during life. That takes a physical form in the hereafter. So I remembered a very good and very relevant athar. Athar are narrations from the Sahaba, radiyallahu ajmain, not traced all the way back to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in that athar, Umar radiyallahu anh, he goes and asks one of the Sahabi about Taqwa. The Sahabi that he goes to, radiyallahu anh, is Ubay bin Ka'b, radiyallahu anh. This guy is not a normal person. He's very esteemed. He's one of the bigger scholars in Medina, one of the biggest scholars in Medina. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he once gave 4 names that take your Quran from these 4 people. He's one of them. So you can imagine how esteemed this person must be. There are other things about him as well, but we'll move on. So, taqwa is being mentioned in the Quran many times. Like if you include all the other tenses of taqwa, yani muttaqi, taqwa, ittaqu, all of that, then maybe slightly over 250 times in the Quran. So Umar radiyallahu anh, he goes and he asks him, Sa'ala Umar radiyallahu anh, and Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu anh, and taqwa. What is taqwa? So he goes, Amirul Mu'mineen, Ama salakta tariqan dha shawk? Have you ever walked a path which had a lot of thorns? He said, Bala, of course I have. So he goes, okay. Fama amilta? What did you do when you walked it? So Umar goes, tashammartu wajtahadtu. That when I started walking, I would tuck my clothes in so they wouldn't get stuck on the thorns, they wouldn't get ripped. And wajtahadtu, I would take a lot of caution with every step. I would walk with a lot of caution. So he goes, fadhaka taqwa. That is taqwa. Just how you're very careful when you're walking so you don't get stuck in the thorns and you don't step in the wrong place. Similarly, you tuck in your clothes so they don't get splashed by the sin. And when you're walking, you make sure you're keeping every step very cautiously. Okay, if I put my step over here, is that okay? Am I going to get stuck? Is that something wrong? Will I get hurt? That is how you walk the walk of life. And that is taqwa. The more you do it, the more muttaqi you become. He goes, okay. So when we get on the Sirat, what happens then? Remember I asked this question, that if this is, we've heard the analogy of it being sharper than a sword, thinner than a hair, finer than a hair. So when a person steps upon the Sirat, if this person slipped during his life all the time, he slipped into the claws and the thorns of sin, and he did not care. For him, the path was wide. He would sometimes indulge in something that was forbidden. Sometimes he would do something else that was just dubious. When he steps on the Sirat, the law of reciprocity begins again. The more carefree he was in life, the more careful he will have to be on the Sirat. It will start shrinking for him. To the point where a person who never even believed, for him there need to be no thorns. The Sirat itself will be as sharp as a sword and as thin as a hair. And as soon as he steps on it, it's going to cut him. He can't even step on it. And he's going to fall into the abyss below. But for a believer who believed, for him, the Sirat will be a little bit wider. And it will have, but this believer was careless in life. He would indulge in sins without even thinking about them too much. So when he steps on the Sirat and starts walking, the Sirat will be a little bit wider, but there will be the thorns that the sins will come back as thorns and as claws. And the hadith that we do tomorrow, inshallah, it will become even more clear. In that hadith, the Prophet ﷺ describes it in more detail. So this, we keep it very short. Why? Not because we want to increase in knowledge, it's because we want to increase in amal. The main reason of keeping this short is so we can increase in amal. So what do we get from this? Right now, if we walk through life carefree about what we eat, what we wear, where we get our money from, it will manifest itself in the form of these claws and hooks and thorns. And right now, if we can exercise caution, then over there it will be easy. The Sirat will be wide, it will be open. And we'll be passing like wind, like horses, like running people, like birds. Or if you're very good, then like lightning. And like the glance, katarf, like we talked about day before yesterday. So I will just leave one more thing so we can actually keep advancing. So remember we talked about Fajr, this is where we started, right? Fajr and Isha. So there will be two things that will be needed on the Sirat. Number one, the lights, because it will be very dark and you cannot see anything. And number two, the velocity, because it's not going to be a small, just walk in the park for 5 minutes. For people, it will be many, many, many years. Allah Azza wa Jal knows how long. So you need the velocity, you need the speed, and you need the light. It's like driving on a dark highway. If you have the speed but you don't know where you're going, what's going to happen? Crash. And if you can see everything, but you don't even have fuel or the car lacks an engine, what's going to happen? The journey is going to get painfully slow. You'll have to walk. So for this, where some scholars have said it might be about 1500 years of travel on the Sirat if you're walking, we need the speed and we need the light. So tomorrow, inshallah, we'll talk about the detail of the Sirat as to how it actually works, how the thorns work, how the claws work, and to whom they work. They won't work on everybody. They work on some people. And why do they work that way? We'll talk about it tomorrow, inshallah. And we will conclude with how can we accumulate both the speed and the light. May Allah Azza wa Jal enable us to understand what we learn and implement it on our daily lives. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha